Picture two different entrepreneurs. Let's call them Alex and Jordan. They're both smart, they both care about their work, and on Monday morning, they both make the same promises to themselves. This week, I'm finally going to do the important stuff. I'm going to send through that tough email. I'll sort out my pricing strategy. I'll make those important sales calls. Now, jump to Friday night. Alex actually did it. Jordan worked all week, 60 hours in fact. He answered the messages, he put out fires, he attended meetings. He solved 100 little problems meanwhile. But that big thing Jordan said that mattered the most, well, that still was not done. Now, if this feels familiar to you, stay with me because this happens to serious people all the time. And here is my question to you. What went wrong? Was it A, Jordan didn't want it enough? B, Jordan lacked discipline? C, Jordan lacked character? Or D, none of the above? Go ahead, pick your answer. Because most people feel pretty sure about the cause of this one. But I think most people get it wrong. And what I'm about to show you should actually be a relief. Because this usually is not as simple as you are lazy.
Hi, I'm John Angeli, the Motivation Maverick, and this is Acumates. We help busy creatives turn plans into proof, not with hype, with an execution OS. Subscribe for practical ideas that you can use today.
Now, this is not just a problem for entrepreneurs. It happens to everyone. Ever planned to study early and then you crammed at the very last minute anyway? Or have you ever promised to yourself that you'd put your phone down and be present, and then you'd spend the whole dinner scrolling away anyhow? Ever agreed with your team on what really matters and then you spent the whole week doing everything except what you said that matters most? This happens all the time. We decide to go for a walk or to train or perhaps to save money or to write something important or to apologize or to make the difficult call or to deal with the important thing that we've been avoiding, and then of course we don't. And here is the strange part. We have gotten so used to this pattern that many people do not even stop to ask, why is this happening? But we should ask why, because buried inside this problem is one of the central facts of human life. Knowing what matters is not the same thing as doing what matters. Psychologists call this the intention-execution gap or the intention-behavior gap. Classical philosophers called it akrasia or weakness of will. Different language, but the same problem. There is a gap between what you plan to do and what your days actually produce. And most people are using the wrong explanation for what is happening. Here is how most people tell the story. Jordan didn't follow through because he really didn't want it badly enough. Or they may say, well, Jordan just lacked the discipline to do what really matters. Or Jordan really lacked character. Deep down, he's kind of lazy and he just wanted to do the easy things instead. Now notice why these explanations seem attractive. Because they are simple, they're neat, they even feel moral and obvious. And if you really decide, then you should push yourself and then you would get it done, right? In other words, we imagine that the energy of the decision made on Monday morning simply travels through the week and then arrives at the point of decision, and then follow through is the next step. Well, this is the story and it sounds plausible enough, but it is also incomplete. Because if motivation were the main thing that was carrying the action, then highly motivated people would be the most reliable executors, but of course they're not. If discipline alone explained it all, then the people who cared the most, they would consistently do what mattered the most, right? But of course, they too don't. And if this were mainly a character problem, then this pattern should mostly disappear among intelligent, serious and responsible adults, right? But plainly, it does not. So here is the better question. What actually gets you from the state of saying, look, I want to do this, to the state of saying, okay, I did it, yeah? What carries behavior from intention into action, because it is clearly not as simple as saying that you should want it more. And this is where the research gets interesting. Across health, education, work, entrepreneurship, and even everyday life, researchers keep finding the same basic patterns. Intentions do matter, but intentions do not explain nearly as much as people think. Yes, there is a real connection between what people plan to do and what they actually do, but there's also a large gap that's left over. And this matters because it means this. It's entirely possible to sincerely want to do something and yet still not to do it. And that's not because you were lying, not because you forgot, not because you secretly never cared to do it, but because somewhere between deciding and doing, something is breaking down. In fact, researchers found something a little counterintuitive. Even when people were highly motivated, their behavior often only improved just a little bit. In other words, the increase in action was smaller than the increase in motivation, which tells us something important. Wanting it more is not nothing, but it is not nearly enough. So researchers started to ask better questions. How does action actually begin? What helps it to continue? What interrupts it? And most important, what can help people get back on track when they drift? And that shift is huge, because once you stop treating execution only as a moral drama and you start treating it as a behavioral process, you will begin to see what is really going on. And once you can see it, you can start to work with it. Now, most people imagine follow-through as a straight line. Intention goes in, and then action comes out. But that is not what real life looks like, right? Real life looks more like an obstacle course. Your good intention has to survive movement through time. It has to survive all these kind of confusion, old habits. It has to survive distractions. It has to survive emotions. It has to survive your own talent for telling flattering stories about why the important thing still has not been done. Now let me show you what I mean by this. Remember Jordan as the example we used earlier. Let's just follow him through the week, shall we? Because we will assume that on Monday morning, Jordan is completely sincere. He's not pretending. He really does want to send through that tough email. He really does want to fix the pricing. He really does want to make those important sales calls that he's been talking about. But when the week actually begins, then 5 things will start happening. First, your motivations cool off. You know that fire you feel on Monday morning about something? That feeling that I'm definitely going to do this kind of energy? Well, by Wednesday afternoon, it often does not feel nearly as vivid. And this is one of the great mistakes that people make. They assume the clarity of the planning moment will still be there later on when needed, but it usually isn't. Your attention shifts, new problems appear, other demands arrive, your emotional state changes, and so by the time you finally have the moment to do the important thing that you've been planning for, the original sense of urgency has now cooled off, and the commitment may still be there in theory, but it no longer feels as hot. And this matters, because your Monday self is not your Wednesday self. The promise was real, it just was not strong enough to keep on burning on its own. Second of all, the important task is too vague to start with. Work on pricing strategy? Well, that sounds good on paper, but at 2:10 p.m. on Wednesday, what does that actually even mean? Based on which framework are you to decide pricing? And what kind of decision do you need? Write out what exactly? How do I know whether the answer that I'm going to decide on is even good? This is another major problem. Easy tasks usually come with clear instructions. You just need to reply to this email. You just need to pay this bill. Fix this one issue. But you know those big, important, meaningful work ideas? They often arrive as a fog, and when you have to choose between something that's clear and simple and something that's messy and confusing, yes, the mind usually chooses the clear path. Not because it matters more, but because it's just easier to start with. A vague task is a delayed task, and the brain will often choose what is clear over what is important. Third of all, old habits will take over. Many people think they are choosing how their day goes, but often they are not. Often they are falling into it. You open the laptop, you then check the email, you then check the messages, then notification, then there's one small problem, then another, then something urgent looking appears, and before you know it, your old routines are now running the show, right? And your new intentions never really even got a chance to start. And this is why smart people get confused about themselves. They think they are making fresh decisions, but very often they are simply reenacting the familiar patterns. Old habits are stronger than fresh promises. Your new intention is young. It is like a little toddler. Your old routines are established, automatic, rehearsed, like an adult, and they're already wired into the shape of your day. So in a fight between a toddler and a fully grown adult, who do you think usually wins the day? So unless something interrupts this pattern, the old pathways will usually win out. The fourth insight that emerged from research is that small obstacles can have a huge power to derail your day. We like to think, if it really matters, then I'll do it. But even tiny barriers can stop us cold. Are you not sure where to start? Well, this is a barrier. Are there too many steps? This is a small barrier. Is the phone sitting right next to you? This is a barrier. The document you need seems to be buried under 47 different tabs. Well, this is a barrier. And here is what people often underestimate. Friction does not look dramatic, and that is why it wins. Tiny barriers beat big intentions more often than people want to admit, because human beings are strongly pulled towards what is easier to do right now. And the small, easy task often beats the big, meaningful task for this exact reason. The small task can be done immediately. The important task often asks much more of you. More clarity, more energy, more courage, more uncertainty. And right now usually wins unless you design against it. And fifth issue, and this one is badly underrated. The task often carries emotion. The task sometimes feels uncomfortable, maybe even scary. This part is often sneaky because avoidance rarely introduces itself honestly. It does not say to you, look, I'm afraid. It says, oh, look, I'm so busy. It says, oh, I'll get to that later. It says, oh, let me just clear up a few things first. Avoidance loves to dress up as productivity because that sales call that you needed to make, well, the person may ignore you. They may reject you. They may expose your weak spots. You know that pricing decision? What about if the customers push back? That big project that you wanted to finish? Well, if you finally publish it, this may reveal to you how incomplete you still feel. So yes, maybe you were busy, but that is not always the whole story. Part of what happened may be that you were avoiding something that was emotionally costly. And this matters to know, because the gap between planning and doing is not just about time management. It is also about fear, doubt, embarrassment, discomfort, and all the rest. You know that tight feeling in the stomach when the important action carries emotional risk? That's what we're talking about. So unless you account for this, productivity advice will always be shallow. So now we can say something much more accurate. We do not usually fail to follow through simply because we do not care. We fail because caring by itself is not a system. Good intentions need help. They have to survive real life. And real life is messy. Your motivation cools down, the task becomes vague, old habits shall take over, friction will get in the way, and discomfort quietly will pull you towards avoidance. And this is a much more complete picture of what is reality. And once you see it, a lot of popular advice starts looking quite inadequate. Just be more disciplined? Okay, but what does that actually mean at the moment of drift? Imagine it is 3:17 in the afternoon. The important task now feels quite fuzzy. Your inbox is right there. Your phone is also 2 inches away. The easier tasks offer instant relief, and that meaningful action carries a lot of emotional cost. What is discipline by itself supposed to do in that moment? It will do something, don't get me wrong. It will, but it is often not enough. And this is why the best researched interventions do not merely try to increase desire. They help redesign the path from intention into action. So what actually can help? Here are 5 things that work much better. 1. Use if-then plans. Don't just say, I'll work on my project sometime. Instead, use an if-then plan. If it is 8 a.m., then I open my pricing document before I check email. If I feel stuck on that hard email, then I write just 2 sentences. If a meeting gets cancelled, then I use that time to make a customer proposal. Now, why does this help? Because you are linking action to specific triggers. The mind responds much better to specific cues rather than to fuzzy promises about things. 2, you want to track reality. Not what you hope to do, not what you meant to do. What did you actually do? Strangely enough, people often improve substantially simply by tracking and writing what really happened. Reviews break self-deception. They interrupt the stories that we tell about ourselves. Did the thing move forward or not? This question matters. Honest tracking is often more powerful than hours of vague self-analysis. 3. Lower the friction. Design your environment for execution. Close those extra tabs. Put the phone in another room. Open that important file first. Make the good choice easy and make the distracting choice that much harder. Yes, I know it sounds all simple, and that is exactly why most people underestimate actions like these. But this is one of the most practical ways for how we can close the gap between our intentions and executions. Now, 4, you can plan for the obstacle. Don't only plan for the achievement of goals. Plan for what usually gets in the way. What distractions usually steal your hours? What feelings tend to appear? What excuses do you regularly reach out for? Once you name the obstacle, it becomes that much easier to deal with them. Do not wait to be surprised by the pattern. Expect it. Be prepared for it. Ambush it. And 5th, you want to build a rhythm, not a rescue mission. And be honest with yourself. Are you waiting for a better week? A calmer week? A week when everything finally will settle down? Well, that week almost will never come. What works much better is to repeatedly review your week. A rhythm that connects the year to the quarter to the month to the week, and the week to today works wonders. And why does that work? Because clarity leaks, motivation leaks, life keeps moving forward. A regular review brings what matters back into focus. Like a bucket with holes in it, your clarity drains over time. So you need a rhythm of regular top-ups, again and again and again. So let's get back to the 2 founders that we started with. Why did one get the important thing done while the other drifted? Well, It was not necessarily about who was smarter. It was not about who was the better person. It was not even mainly about who wanted it more. The real difference is usually more practical than this. One of them turned intention into a structure of execution, while the other just left their intention floating inside the chaos of a busy week. One translated intentions into something that the week could actually carry through, and the other did not. And that is the intention execution gap. It is the space between what you truly mean to do and what your days actually produce. And here is the good news. Once you see this, the goal is no longer to become some entirely different kind of species, a different kind of person. You do not need to become magically perfect. You just need to build a better bridge, a better execution system, one that helps you to carry through what matters and to get this done. And that to me is the deeper reason why execution systems matter. Not because people need more guilt, not because they need another planet that collects dust, but because what matters is often fragile. It gets buried inside the noise. It gets shoved aside by urgency. It fades into vague, some days later kind of promises. The real work is in building a rhythm of review, of translation, of course correction, one that's strong enough to protect what matters when the week gets loud. Because the question is not whether you have intentions. Almost everyone has good intentions. The question is your life set up to carry them forward? That is where execution begins. You got this.